This is a surreal story of living in Santa Monica, California. The word surreal, I may not be able to pronounce right. Don't use this word so often, but it's appropriate for this story. I'm now in Santa Monica. I spent maybe 2.5 months this time out of my usual pattern of living here and there. And in the last even 3-4 days, I had interesting experience, surreal, and I want to talk about it. I don't know if I can capture in an easy way because it's surreal, but all together pointing something. Maybe one of the main theme of this is that in this living in this world, surreal, turbulence, and also living, in my case, in Santa Monica, Hawaii, New Zealand, and Japan, is itself is a very interesting experience, surreal, because each location brings out interesting story, but especially Santa Monica. I've been having a doubt of whether I want to stay in this town too long because of homeless and political issues and violence possibility, but still there are lots of attraction. And let me start with that one. The stimulation of living in Santa Monica is probably related to the weather, blue sky, and fresh air next to the beach. I play pickleball, and today I was about to go swimming at the YMCA and steam bath and stuff like that. So my life here is very simple as many other places, but basic routines are one element in the morning is to do pickleball and YMCA. In the afternoon, it's again YMCA to do some weightlifting and stuff like that, and visiting the library. So that set the pace, and I'm not socially active, except I enjoy staying in California and Santa Monica because of some oddness and surreal experience. And let me talk about it. I know it's a long introduction to get here. But the first item that I want to talk about is the encounter with Mike and Jennifer. I think the other ones, their names. I just met 5 minutes ago. We spent maybe 40 minutes talking all of that. Various interesting discussion. Fascinating. Because after playing the pickleball, I want to have a rest under the tree, and then this encounter happened. By itself, it's a wonderful story, but if I capture the essence of it, for the sake of this surrealness, the main discussion that I point out is that living in Santa Monica and fairly, civilized setting, there are homeless people and crime. In their case, they have, this is like last year, October or something, so less than a year ago, and this is nearby Lincoln Boulevard, really busier part of the town. And out of their house or apartment, I don't know, both of them, one in the car, Jennifer, and riding the bike, Mike, was to go out. And as she was driving out, a car stopped and the gun pointed at her. It's unreal, surreal. And I have to cut the story short because I wish I did record the whole conversation. But basically, she basically froze, but not in the sense of fear, but nowhere to go. So she was in the car, and the guy stopped the car right next to her. So it's fairly trafficy place, but that's what happened. And Mike was nearby, but whatever the sequence, the guy had the gun pointing to her into through the window, or not opening the window. And thereupon she just looked at the guy without doing anything. And I said, that's the state of presence. We talked that, and it's like a mind is empty, and there's nowhere to go. The subject I often talk about. What do you do when you have nowhere to go? She froze, but not in the sense of fear, but in the sense of presence, is what I felt. And I think she agreed to it, that there's nothing you can do. So if she get killed, which she doubted that may happen because it's a busy street, so that the fraction of a second, she felt like she experienced a huge amount of information. And in that instance, she was at presence, looking at the guy, pointing the gun in front of her, and said no or something, and then start to roll up the window. So that basically captured the main part that I want to talk about. But just to relate it to that, her partner, Mike, also had the sense that he had a backpack and he was on the bike, ready to go somewhere, and in the backpack was expensive materials but he didn't want to give away. So they basically stand still and confront it, not in a violent way, but with a presence that I often talk about. No mind, no self, and just be. What happened then is that this car stopped nearby, and there are two other guys inside the car. This guy, one guy, pointing the gun. He had to pull off his hand from the window because the window is rolling up, and perhaps felt that the time is not good enough because it's not the wide street, so they could be blocked, and it's not going to be a pleasant situation for them. So they took off. Maybe nobody's surprised to hear this story, but I was surprised that I was just taking a break, enjoying the time. Those two came with Collie, the dog, chasing the squirrel. And we started to talk stories, and then this story popped up. We had so much in common to talk in terms of how the world is and where we are and how things may happen, and the discussion about the vision they have in the future or how to live in this life. And we had so much connection. And that's one of the key points that I find it very interesting to live in Santa Monica, that you meet people. In playing pickleball, I have met interesting people. Not to say ordinary people is not interesting, but to say interesting background and interesting life stories. So let me move on to this surreal story, to the next. The next one is just yesterday. That's why this is surreal. And stories like this, the actual experiences like this, that after this afternoon, after doing the stretch and the weightlifting exercise, I came out, as usual, went to the library just across. So I love this setting of pickleball, YMCA library, all nearby, bicycle distance. So I was, after the YMCA, ready to go check some books and do some reading. Quiet place, sunny time. But yesterday was Friday, but what happened is that after the COVID, Friday and Sunday, they are off. So I figured out, well, there's nothing can be done. Then as I was to leave, there was a guy who had, how do you call that, the luggage that you carry onto the airplane. He had that, and he turned out to be homeless later, which I wasn't sure at the time, but he appeared to be so. So he told me that that is not the day, but he was there to do some work. He turned out to be a screenplay writer, for doing that for whatever years. I think he's like 35 years old. So we start to talk, and since there's nothing to be done at the library, okay, interesting. I didn't know at the time that he was homeless. But I said, why don't we talk? There's nothing can be done here. And let's just sit on the chair, not the chair, but the stairs and talk. So we talked, and then what I found is that he's a screenplay writer, and he's written copyrighted material, which in description, if I ask him and he approves, I can share with you, and that you can read. But anyway, at the time, he told me that he wrote many screenplay script and sell it and all that. So we talked about what's going about AI and how it's affecting the business for those people. He's not in the union. But our conversation turned into his most recent work, which is the movie screenplay he wrote on Hemingway. I know something about Hemingway. So we started to talk, and long story short, he wanted to talk more about it because, I don't know, we had some interesting inquiry and discussion because he was very serious and somewhat cohesive in what he's talking. My curiosity of writing script and Hemingway, his life itself, brought to the conversation. He decided to open up his computer and start to read. Maybe he spent even 10 minutes reading. And I thought, knowing something about Hemingway and the script starting from his 17 years, 18 years old and all that. And I was interested. And this guy had some sense to be able to integrate the idea. Of course, the life story, first, 10 minutes of listening is not good enough. But that was long enough that I felt this guy's got some talent. But I realized that he hasn't sold any material. But for this one, he has a manager, and working together, they changed the script, and it's copyrighted. So as it stands, that those material you can share with potential buyers, producers of movie or whatever. He mentioned that he even spent time discussing idea with Spielberg. He had another discussion with the lady who played with what's his name, Tom Cruise in the Top Gun. That there was some discussion he had with this woman. A little unclear if that's really is the case, because by that time I realized he's homeless. But I'm a curious guy. I want to know people's life, how they live, what they are interested in, how they approach it, what their strategy, how can they make it work, pros and cons. So at one point I captured the essence of how I felt about his project. And by that time, he was happy that I was interested and found the story interesting, meaningful, with potential. So I summarized that he has the talent of writing, but also connecting, opening up some conversation Whether it's actually happened with Spielberg and this other lady, I don't know, but it's okay. And the material, he said he's going to send it to me because he was happy that I listened to him. Also, I've written books and did the videos, couple of videos, 3 hours and a half long each. But I know something about producing those. And I was interested in him. And of course, if I can help him in any way, I'll be happy to, as much as I also get the benefit of knowing the life of this guy. But of course, Hemingway, because I've read the book like Old Man and the Sea. Was that? Yeah, that's one of the first books I wrote when I was 15 years old or something. And I know something about his background, so I pointed that his committing suicide reminded me of the story of Picasso, with lots of talent. But toward the end of his life, he was very quiet and afraid of death. In case of Hemingway, he succeeded, Nobel Prize, this and that, Pulitzer Prize, and 4 marriages, exploration, but he had the psychological disorder. I don't know what's the word to describe, depression. So that put him, after all the successes, maybe nothing left. Whatever the case is, even reflecting my life of exploration of different countries and 2 marriages, and from nuclear safety, Fukushima, to business school at Stanford, and book writing, video, and having traveled many countries, and also even now visiting California to Hawaii to New Zealand and Japan, and going around at age 75. I like to explore my life. Hemingway, certainly. And I heard that there's a movie that was developed on Hemingway. But long story short, I thought there's a possibility. So he sent me the script. And how can anything like that happen? I want to help him, but cautiously, but guide him. And I even gave some guidance how to, because he had some, I call the pitfall that he needed to work on in his approach, without me going into detail. So that's the second Surreal story. Let me put just the third one, if anybody's listening. This third one is related to AI, ChatGPT, and what we call hallucination. When the AI is not functioning well, it's like a symptom of delusion. Okay? So, related to those 2 stories, this one has the element of human behavior captured from neuroscience point of view, but put in AI's algorithm, but that algorithm may not function well, like a pitfall, called hallucination. To me, that indicates rationality is the main theme of the algorithm to capture the essence, if we may call that, from the human, from the web pages, to synthesize, to come up with any scenario, insight that may be helping users to benefit from. So you can call it, in an ideal sense, it's like a rationality with all the information captured in human. It's a limited space at this moment, but huge enough that we can benefit if we can find a way using the neuroscience and idea of an algorithm, deep learning, and ChatGPT is, in a way, representing that rationality to the point that if you let the ChatGPT pass the test, they can pass 90% percentile, that top 10% in the deep, whatever the legal test or SAT or medical exam, whatever the case may be. So there, the rationality is the theme with a huge database, deep learning with algorithms. But it does go through this hallucination. To me, it's like a delusionary situation that pops up. And I related to that, to the lucid dream, which I had early in the morning. So that's the conversation I had in the other video that you can find in the description. The point is that at certain occasions, just as a human may get into and may have a lucid dream, halfway awake but half asleep, image float around, and it's kind of like hallucination. In a way, it's not rational, or in many ways, but there's an element of unknown manifesting. Just like when you're in the path, not knowing where, but various scenarios pop up, not knowing which one to choose. But you feel comfortable because you're not rushing to make a judgment, just going with the flow, like I said, go with or ride the wave of the universe. But not in a solid, but half into imagination or lucid dream. Not totally rational, but have the sense of being, that you are authentic, not committing, but floating. So the illusion may be much less than that you get caught up in the mind. So it's a halfway between, if I have a structure of the brain and heart, halfway in between. Rationality is there, but the image from the heart is coming up, and they are kind of a processing to figure out the insight, but not rushing. Therefore, it may move on, up or down. So I can relate to that as a way of me functioning, sometimes rationally, sometimes go with emotion, and sometimes feel happy in between, early in the morning, in that lucid dream type of space, and want to stay there because there's no rational reason to rush, but like rain and intelligence to come out, but not quite. So exploratory nature of who we are may be found in such a situation, dreamlike situation. Near-death experience may fall into that category too. In my analogy, use the brain, listen to your heart, live with the mission. That's what it said. And the Dalai Lama commented in his foreword to my book, saying that use the brain, but at the same time, listen to your heart at the same time, and live with a mission. But before coming up to insight, as much as lucid dream or AI hallucination, and maybe verified by the neuroscience of how we come with insight, there's between state of ambiguity, therefore hallucination. Somewhat similar to delusion, but not quite, if you get my point. Okay, I spent almost 25 minutes on this, but because of the nature and because of the incident that happened, and without me going into the specifics of the lucid dream, which by itself is interesting. Back to the Santa Monica stimulation and my being in this city with interesting encounters, given the turbulence. We may have this surreal discussion, image floating around, and how that sense of presence clear up the path, and knowing how we use the brain, but not to be caught up in there, but at the same time listen to heart of the presence. It's part of life that I may cherish in Santa Monica, even though I don't feel comfortable to be gun pointed. But this whole world. Oh, let me just say one more thing before I finish. In this discussion with Mike and Jennifer, we are talking about people who are quiet. On the web or news, we have all the highlighted discussion, turbulence, even craziness. But down deep, not as visible on the web, are those silent people. And that's quiet, but it's very important in the sense of us finding the passage for humanity into the future. And how that silent intelligence or presence may play out. To me, I'm not going into hallucinating, but being able to process this surreal process with presence. To me, that is something we can delve into, or we can look into and stay connecting to the heart as we use the brain and find the destiny. I think that's the path that we want to take. And therefore, I may want to come back to Santa Monica in future as well. We shall see.